Right, so if you aren't aware, the Frost Rework is currently on the test server for Rainbow Six Siege. It's still not fully coming to the game until next season, which is Year 8 Season 3, but Ubisoft wanted to put it on the test server a bit early, of course just to get some early testing done, but I also think this is because this rework has been very controversial within the R6 community. I mean, ever since its original reveal, people have been very against this rework. I was in the crowd at Montreal during the reveal, and a lot of the crowd booed at the rework. I never booed at it, I found it quite interesting. However, since I have tried this on the test server, I definitely think there should be some changes coming to it, but I don't think they should entirely scrap the rework. So be sure to stay to the end of the video to understand the full point of what I'm trying to say here, and as well as this, I hope Ubisoft does see this video since it is on the test server for a reason and they are going to make tweaks to it based on community feedback. So the first thing I've seen so many people commenting is, why is Frost getting a rework? I honestly don't know. Ubisoft hasn't given us a reason, but I think the reason I can make out why they have given Frost a rework isn't because Frost herself is necessarily overpowered, but it's just traps in general on defense are getting a bit overwhelming for the attacking team, and they should probably be a bit toned down. Now, Ubisoft had two main options when it comes to this. The first thing which Ubisoft could have done was just half all of the traps in general. Take away half of Legion's goo mines, take away half of Kapkan's traps, and just remove that overwhelming pressure of there being so much utility, especially traps, on defense. But it seems like that was maybe a bit too extreme from them. They didn't want to necessarily nerf every single trap operator, rather they wanted to tweak traps to make them a bit more counteractable by attackers, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So for example, if you walk into Melusi's Banshee, you can easily shoot the Banshee and you can also still have your gun up to fight back. If you step in a goo mine, yes, it will be doing damage to you, but you can also still keep your gun up and fight any attacker which goes to swing you. Same case for Eller's Gersmont mines, although you will be blinded / concussed, you can still fight back. And it's the same case with Fenrir, although he is very strong and should probably get a nerf in the near future, you can still technically fight back since you do still have your gun up, although your vision is limited. So to me, this rework to Frost is to make her gadget more in line with these other trap operators and make it where these traps aren't necessarily killing the attackers, rather putting them at a bigger disadvantage, allowing you as a defender to act off that information. Like I was given with the example of those operators, although you are activating their traps, you still have a fighting chance, but you are at a bigger disadvantage than if you weren't to hit those traps. The only operators which are kind of against this rule is Kapkan and Frost. Kapkan is still different than Frost though, since it needs multiple of his gadgets on a doorway to kill an operator who is at full health. I know a lot of you are going to bring up Thorn as well. Thorn is just like Ella and Legion. The main thing about Thorn isn't really to kill anyone, it's rather just to displace them and give away their position. So if you take a look at it, all of the trap operators in Rainbow Six Siege are used to put the attackers at a disadvantage, but not necessarily kill them. This is where I believe the Frost rework stemmed from, and why Ubisoft decided to allow attackers to pull themselves out of Frost mats, because that would put the Frost mats more in line with these other trap operators, because then it is more simply, if you as an attacker hop on a Frost mat and pull yourself out, you are still alive, but you are put at a disadvantage, and that is the same consequences which happen with other traps. They're trying to make Frost mats less lethal, and more just consequence based, like I said, similar to the other trap operators. And so if that is the reasoning behind the Frost rework, and again they haven't stated what the reason is, but I do believe that is the reason, then I'm not massively against it, but I do believe that there should be some small tweaks coming to this rework to make Frost still viable, but also keep this little change in mind. So how does the Frost rework currently work? If you as an attacker jump in a Frost mat, you will now be able to revive yourself and pull yourself out of the Frost mat. When you pull yourself out, you will be on 20 HP, and as well as this, you'll have a debuff effect for the next 25 seconds. Your character will make a loud grunting noise giving away your position, and as well as this, you will leave bloody footsteps on the floor, which defenders can see and track you down. Now, that debuff effect is pretty cool. It's extremely unique. We've never really seen anything like that in any other operator. Heck, maybe that could be something which they bring to Gridlock's Track Stinger. I think that'd be quite an interesting buff to Gridlock. And that debuff effect itself is one of the reasons why I was actually quite interested in this rework itself and wasn't fully against it. But now that Frost is more in line with these other trap operators, I feel like there may not be a massive incentive to play Frost for a lot of people now. She does still operate differently, and she still does make the attacker immobile for a certain period of time, and that is your chance to swing on the Frost mat and get a kill. But I think my main issue with this is the fact the attacker can pull themselves out of the Frost mat and sort of get away without many consequences. Yes, they are on 20 HP, but we are playing in a game with a one-shot headshot mechanic, so that doesn't necessarily mean you're out of the game. As long as you can always one-shot kill someone on the enemy team, you shouldn't really be caring about your health that much. Yes, you are at a disadvantage when you have less health, but it isn't the massive disadvantage which a lot of people think it is. So have Frost have the same amount of Frost mat she has right now, and if an attacker jumps in the Frost mat, they will of course be injured, and if a friendly attacker comes along, it works as a current system, the attacker will pull them out of the frost mat, and this attacker who was revived from the frost mat will have no debuff effects, so they can still run, they won't show the blood trails, and it will act like it currently is in the game itself. However, if this attacker who is injured in the frost mat makes the conscious decision themselves that they are going to self-revive rather than wait for a teammate to clear the area and revive them, then that debuff effect should apply to the operator, so they make that loud noise, they can't sprint, and as well as this, they show a bloody footprint trail. However, I think there should be a change to this debuff effect as well, and if an operator chooses to pull themselves out of a frost mat rather than waiting for a teammate to revive them, then during the period of this debuff effect, which is applied by the frost mat, you should consistently lose health maybe every 2 seconds until you eventually bleed out and die. I think this makes so much more sense for the Frost rework, because that means if you want to play like the current system and wait for your teammate to revive you, yes, you will still be on 20 HP, but you can still play out the rest of the round and not have to worry about any debuff effect or any bleeding out. This little change to the rework would advise team play, so you're not solo pushing a window by yourself and jumping in a frost mat, but if you are doing that, you are still getting punished for it. This is punishing people for solo pushing windows or not looking where they're going or not droning out rooms. If you and someone else are droning out each other and you're pushing a room together, and one you jumps in a frost mat, the other one can revive you, you have no debuff effect, and you have that little reward there for playing as a team because you're not getting that bleeding out effect. But let's take that same scenario. Let's say you're solo pushing, you're not doing a very good job droning, and you jump in a frost mat. You have no teammates around you, you fail to drone that room successfully, and as well as that, you are not playing as a team, so your next decision is to either wait in that frost mat and potentially bleed out for a teammate to rotate across the map and save you, wasting a bunch of time, or you make the decision to pull yourself out the frost mat yourself, you have this new debuff effect, and now you're going to have a limited number of time where you can't sprint, your health is diminishing until you die, and as well as this, your position is quite loudly revealed. This means that you are going to have to use a play. If you're an operator which is quite utility heavy, you're going to have to use your utility fast, you're going to have to maybe try and get some picks on defenders quite fast as well, because your time is limited and you are bleeding out until you eventually get eliminated. However, there is a new little change in this rework as well, which I think would help coincide with this as well, and that is the fact that Finka cancelled out the debuff. So if this attacker who is by themselves does decide to pull themselves out the frost mat and accept the fact that they've got 20 seconds left to live and they have to make a play, the only way you can survive in that situation is if you have a Finka on the team. Yes, that will be making Finka a direct counter to Frost, but at the current point in time of the rework, anyone can pull themselves out of the frost mat and after 25 seconds be back to normal. But with my proposed changes, the only way that you would able to go back to normal after pulling yourself out of a frost mat is if you have a Finka on the team. And I think that's a lot more fair, because then you have to bring a dedicated operator to counter something which isn't necessarily going to happen. And just because the defenders have a frost, it doesn't necessarily mean someone is going to hop on Finka just in case that happens. I just think Ubisoft could be really smart with this rework and advise team play like the way I proposed, because right now there's not really any desire to wait for a teammate to pull you out the frost mat if within the space of 2.5 seconds I can do it myself. Yes, I will have a debuff effect for 25 seconds, but I can still fight back, and I'm not really wasting a lot of time. I just think the consequences of hitting a frost mat, which aren't necessarily the easiest things to stand in, you know? It's not like a goo mine where they're invisible. Frost mats are quite noticeable, so the frost isn't going to pull off plays that often. So if we are going to make frost more in line with other defending operators and give the attacker a fighting chance, then at least limit the fighting chance they have. Give them that limited period. They've pulled themselves out of the frost mat, but they are still bleeding out. They have 20 seconds to make a play, set up a drone, move their gadget around, open up a wall. This has to be consequences for their actions. If they don't want to suffer this fate, have a teammate beside you to pull you out of the frost mat, and you will not bleed out. I think that is a very fair compromise, because I know so many people don't want the feature for people to be able to pull themselves out of a frost mat. I think if we make it not a very desirable option, but still keep that option there, it could lead to some very interesting plays, as well as keeping that older system, but improving it a little bit and adding more depth to this gadget. Like, could you imagine there being a 1v1 situation and the attacker hits a frost mat, but rather than being instantly eliminated, they have the option to pull themselves out, and now they have a limited time of like 20 seconds to quickly try and go for a plan. This would escalate things so much more and sort of make that danger of frost a bit more intimidating, and I just think Ubisoft are going in a pretty good direction with this Frost rework, but I think this little tweak would be very nice for her. It would make there be a very big difference between getting pulled out by a teammate rather than self-reviving, as well as still making Frost more in line with those other defending gadgets. But of course, you're welcome to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about my ideas, maybe tweak on it a little bit. I definitely think this is a really solid idea. It is my own, I know I'm blowing on my own trumpet here, but I think this is a very reasonable middle ground which still keeps Ubisoft's Ubisoft's vision of the rework relevant and useful, as well as keeping the older iteration of Frost still relevant as well. I just feel like being able to pull yourself out of a Frost map within the space of 2.5 seconds and having a somewhat, non-lethal debuff isn't really that big of a consequence for standing in a Frost map, which for a lot of the time is relatively easy to clear. But as it currently stands, the Frost rework is still in the test server. We still do have a good amount of months before it ever comes to the live build, which will be in Season 3 of Year 8. Again, this video was made as constructive criticism and feedback. That's the point of the test server, and I really do hope they take it into consideration. And yeah, I hope I laid my points out clearly and you understand what I was trying to say when it comes to a little change to this rework. So everyone, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you like my little proposed change to the Frost rework? What is your view on the Frost rework in general? I'm really interested to hear all your thoughts. So be sure to drop a like on this video if you did enjoy, dislike it if you did not, subscribe if you're new. I shall catch you all later. I love you all. Stay safe. Peace.